scenarios are clearly hyperbolic, but what we have been collectively referring to as the metaverse has been and still is evolving, and it will continue to as we get closer to whatever it is that winds up actually manifesting. And that is still very much in question. An interesting quote from a recent gamesindustry.biz article by Rob Fahey: pick 10 people working on building or promoting metaverse ideas and ask them for their vision of what it will actually be in practical terms, and you'll get 11 answers, each different from the last in fundamental ways. So let's start right there. I'm going to introduce our 5 panelists so that we can get 6 more visions of the metaverse. Ash Kusha, CEO of Orbit. Orbit is creating a platform to connect the experiences and myriad metaverse environments. Josh Newman is president of Melon, a metaverse development company with deep roots in the music business, but they also have clients like the NFL and Chipotle. Jamil Molodina, CEO of Hexagram. Jamil and his team, they're focusing on narrative experiences that provide the user with both presence and agency. He wants to make the metaverse binge worthy. Marcus Siegel, CEO of Forever Games. Marcus is making games that are metaversal representations of IRL games that are inherently social, and he believes creators in the space have a generational responsibility. And Michelle Cook. Michelle has been in the IP and tech attorney for over 20 years. She has seen a lot of change and evolution in the games and entertainment space. Michelle's currently partner and leader of intellectual property protection and enforcement at Minot, Phelps, and Phillips. Okay, so regarding format, I am going to actually, how do I unshare this screen? I don't even know how to do that now, Ned. Hope we don't get stuck with this thing. There we go. Let's see if that works. Oh, there we go. Okay, I got it now. It's apparently the first time that I've Zoomed over the last 2 years. All right, so regarding format, I'm going to ask each of the panelists a question based on their expertise. However, discussion is encouraged. If anyone else on the panel has something to add or to press on each of these topics, just step on up. And viewers, go on now, get in there, use chat to say hello and introduce yourself. And please comment at will. Your input and insights are very much appreciated. If you have questions though, use the Q&A button if you want to get your Q's aid. Okay, so let's get right into it. Ash, Orbit.
Hey,
how you doing? Orbit has an architectural or maybe even infrastructural approach to the metaverse. Could you let us know what you're building and then maybe elaborate a bit on why that is essential for what your vision of the metaverse should or will be?
Right. So I'll start by saying like what the word metaverse means to us as a company and why we think for us at top of everything, the question of why this word even exists is the most important issue, right? So we identified the answers to why the metaverse exists as an important term and sort of the space that nobody can really pinpoint where it's going, what it is in terms of material, was a few issues. One of them, the most important, is that the UX of the internet sucks, right? It's a 2D world of information is like splashed on the screen, and parallel to this sort of text-based informational and video and image-based informational internet, there is this world of exciting UX called gaming. And the UX of gaming has just like extremely evolved in the last 20 years to some exciting areas. And I think one part of why we look at the metaverse as the next iteration of the internet is that. And the second part to us is the fact that the economy of the internet is broken, and the ad model that has been sort of pushed into monopolies that exist today is like we have one monopoly for music, one monopoly for video, and there's like these massive entities fighting one another over which cuts they get. And the second is financial liberation. And partly it's because also people are interested in investing, and they want to be involved on a micro level, even on a nano financial way. People are engaged, whether it's on Robinhood, and they want to be in the conversation of finance and not be behind the Wall Street barriers. And the third one is trust, fairness, and that is also based on the problems that the last 12 to 15 years of mobile internet and the application ecosystem created. Was you could actually possess a lot of mass data, the big data that you could sell. And we think an aggregation of these problems have initiated a discussion for a new way of looking at the internet. And that is, I think, the best description of why we need a metaverse, or a public metaverse with many, many worlds involved. So now what we did was to look at this from the infrastructure lens, was that in order to achieve this, we have to build a new type of compute, if you will, that will result in many, many applications that will aggregate worlds and connect games. Now, key areas, and I'll finish my explanation. We've solved the accessibility. We've already possessed technology that is solving the access of many worlds in one place, and we've built a browser for it, essentially. And also, because we run on this new compute, we've been able to connect all these worlds to one another, right? So interoperability on a code level. And also beyond that, we've been able to create the financial sort of full spectrum tools that are required for this financial revolution, which follows the Web3 model. And that suite of tools and technologies is what we're trying to offer the developer ecosystem and the consumer side.
All right. Thank you for that. Well, Josh, knowing that all these virtual worlds, Roblox, Decentraland, the Sandbox, et cetera, are not yet connected and interoperable, does that influence your consultation approach to brands and other entities looking for a presence in the metaverse? I mean, what should they be thinking about, and how do you work with them?
Absolutely. I think that we are drawn to Roblox at the moment, in particular, because of the audience that's there. There's 55 million daily active users. It is the largest aggregation of youth culture online anywhere right now. It's massive as far as engagement goes, and the amount of people that are using it, and for the duration. I love the future of what everyone is talking about. All of these platforms have such an incredible opportunities and potential, but right now the audience isn't everywhere, and we are very focused on being in front of the largest audiences we can engage with now. To your point, there is very limited interoperability between the walled garden platforms. It's a bit different when you start to get into the world of Web3 and blockchain, and that does have much greater promises of those interoperability channels. But when we talk with a brand about what their strategy is, there's a number of things to consider. One is, like, what is the audience you're trying to engage with? Both from a demographic, but also scale. And really, like, what is your intention? Are you looking for something that's going to be persistent and long-term? Are you looking for an event type experience that's going to have a huge spike for a limited period of time? Maybe your brand isn't ready to be there all the time. And it's the most important thing for any brand to consider, I think, about any of these platforms is, can you be there in an authentic way? Does your brand have a reason to be there? And we're totally up for exploring that with different IP brands. We're very focused on entertainment in general, and we're excited about all of the different things that you can do in all of these blank palettes right now. it's an incredibly creative sandbox to play in. But there's also the potential danger of coming in and doing something that's like jumping the shark, where you really have missed the culture of each of these communities. I think have a different culture to them. You're looking at Roblox as a community, Fortnite has a community, Sandbox, Decentraland, and all these emerging platforms. And some of the people that I'm sharing the mic with today are building the future right now too, and they'll have cultures. So I think, does a brand want to be involved with the most cutting edge future type of experience that maybe doesn't have that audience yet, but that's their identity? Or is a big part of what they're trying to do to reach a large group of people? So those are all questions that we ask, and then we help try to find that identity and voice for the brand or with the brand that's trying to have a presence there. And then what is that authentic experience going to be? And how do we bring an added value to that audience? Why does an audience need to sit through any branded experience when there's a plethora of UGC creators out there that are making amazing experiences as it is? So what is it that's going to be special about what we bring to the table with them?
Yeah, and I mean, I know you have a music background. For those who don't know, Josh managed Fall Out Boy and a handful of other big emo bands. And I know that you count them among your clients today. Are musical artists thinking about this space in a specific way that you found?
I think that there are a number of different thought processes going on with music artists on various platforms. A couple things that I think resonate with me at the moment. One is that music artists, and I think entertainment or celebrities, have a desire to be the first, always. And I think with the platforms that we're seeing, a lot of times they're looking at it and they go, oh, well, like so-and-so, like Travis Scott was actually, I think Marshmello was the first one on Fortnite, or someone can check me and it's probably some other artist. But as soon as that happens, where it's like, oh, Travis Scott did X, Y, and Z or whatever, artists are like, well, I'm not doing that now. And I think that people need to get over that. Yeah. That kind of thinking, because these platforms are really here to stay, and an amazing platform to communicate and interact with their audiences. So well, I see this as a tremendous opportunity, and it really comes down to like your creativity in the sandbox here, not the sandbox, the platform, which I think is also another great outlet that we'll see a lot of great music activations in the future. But again, there are some platforms out there, Roblox, like smashing it at the moment, where you can go into this world, create either an event or a persistent experience to drive huge audience engagement, and if done right, a tremendous new monetization stream off the back of virtual goods and potentially in-game experiences. I mean, are the games that we've done, or the experiences that we've done with music artists, have all netted them much more money than they would normally make from their live show fee and their merchandise sales combined. And it was like a 15-minute virtual event that they did. That's staggering.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good thing that Travis Scott didn't feel like he was doing what Marshmello had done, because he made something like $20 million supposedly on that.
He made a lot of money. I'm sure he was really happy. And every artist that I've seen, whether it's on Fortnite or Roblox, Minecraft as well, in some activations, everyone I think is left feeling pretty positive about both the audience engagement and quite surprised about the level of monetization that they saw.
Yeah. Now, Michelle, I have to admit, you have a bit of an intimidating title: Leader of IP Protection and Enforcement. I'd love to better understand your day-to-day as well as Manat's objectives as they pertain to this space. And in the context of what you've heard so far, like, what do you see as the biggest opportunities or even challenges ahead for IP owners, or perhaps even not IP owners?
I think it is going to be a real challenge for IP owners, and particularly those in the US, because of the legal requirements to establish rights in brands here in the US. And, unfortunately, the gaming industry, going back to video games, is where I think we can start looking at how brands or name, image, and likeness has been protected by the courts as new technologies and mediums have come forward. And they have not always been kind or generous to the brand owner or the celebrity or the musician because of this. In part, there's different arguments, but one is transformative, right? That, it's in this new medium. And so the people behind the video game are also considered artists, and free speech will always trump trademark rights. And so you have this tension between brands and creators, and then the creators and the brands that are in the virtual space. And I think, Josh raised some, very good questions, and I think, we're really well suited for the metaverse is really well suited for entertainment and especially gaming, right? I mean, gaming has kind of been the beachhead of the metaverse, and the rest of the industries are just kind of catching up to it. But I think for brand owners, they have to make a decision about how they're going to enter the space, because they actually have to have a presence in the space to ensure that they're going to have protection for their brands. And that creates some challenges, for where you have multiple platforms. Do you make a big presence here? Where's your audience? Do you have to put in that same level of investment on multiple platforms? Do you do a singular event? Like a fashion show, which I think, was really popular during the pandemic. And we've already talked about some musicians who are dipping their toes in the water. Right. And then, another on the reverse side, which is related here, is the anonymity that the metaverse gives people, right? So if you have somebody who's pretending to be a celebrity, like if my alter ego is Beyonce and I'm Beyonce in the metaverse, what if I'm a bad actor? Yeah. And, to put a more positive spin on it, what if I create something in the metaverse and, but no one knows who I am, right? Because they just see my Beyonce avatar. And, and that creates all kinds of challenges for identifying rights. If someone's infringing, again, if someone's a bad actor, does it leave the platform always open to the lawsuit because the brand owner can't identify the individual behind the avatar and the action in question? So, I mean, I know I've rattled off a whole lot of questions here, but these are the things that, my clients are coming to me with as we try to walk through their business strategies and how they're going to incorporate the metaverse. Because I think clients that I see are kind of like in different camps, right? They're in different spaces and readiness or even understanding of what the metaverse is. And, I think some are, some see this as kind of like missing out on domain names, right? Like when domain names first hit, they were ignored, mm-hmm. right? No one thought people would shop online. No one thought online services would really replace in-person meetings and services and ways to get information. And as a result, a lot of companies lost out on their, optimal domain names. And I think that fear is driving a lot of, nervous energy about what's going to happen in the metaverse.
Yeah, I'd like you to elaborate on something that you said. You mentioned that IP owners must have a presence to protect their position. I may have misunderstood that, but can you say a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not, when I say presence, I meant that's the best way to ensure that you will be able to protect your rights in the metaverse. So if I can just be a legally just a little bit here, in the US, you get rights from using your trademark. Right. But those rights are for what you're doing and what is maybe very close by, right? Very highly related goods and services to what you actually do. To get a registration in the US, which gives you nationwide rights, you actually have to use your mark for what is in your application. So if I make clothes, I'm going to register my trademark for clothing, right? Once I sell it. And the question is that clothing category, is my registration for in-world clothing sufficient for me to protect my mark for virtual clothing with my brand, right? And the case law has not been, for video games, has not been particularly kind to brand owners. And so the best way to ensure that you can protect your brand in the virtual space is to actually use your mark in the virtual space so that you can get it registered for virtual goods or services. So I'm not saying you absolutely need it, but it is the surest way to make sure you can have that protection.
Yeah, makes total sense. Appreciate that. Marcus, Forever's vision of the metaverse is highly social, for lack of a better phrase. However, as you have written, that introduces a lot of potential issues. How are you approaching user safety? What should we be thinking about that maybe we are not yet in that realm?
Great question. And thanks to all the panelists for kind of setting me up. I feel like I'm getting like an underhand wiffle ball pitch here. We are in interesting times, and we are the pioneers and creators of the immersive metaverse. And so, metaverses have been around, for 30 years. I mean, I worked at Zynga. We made Farmville. That was a metaverse, software that people meet up and interact in. But the metaverse is it's taking a big step forward now. It's getting immersive, and with VR and AR, we're going to see it everywhere. And the level of presence, the feeling that this reality I am in is a real reality, the walls are coming down. And I think that all of us as creators, we have, I've said it, a generational responsibility to create a good base that those generations that follow us can build upon and make something really great. And when I look at what's happening now, there's a lot that I love. And Minecraft and Roblox and Fortnite, there's a lot to love. And then I'm also seeing a lot of stuff that kind of bums me out. I mean, when we decide to create wealth stratification at the front of the game, that kind of bums me out. Someone buying a $500,000 piece of land next to Snoop Dogg is not as interesting to me as 1 million people a year buying a Snoopachino and, drinking it and having their voice change or something, or get some new dance moves or unlock a song. And I'm hopeful that we can, as creators, take the time out, because we're talking about resources, engineering and product leaders. We're going to have to take time out from revenue generating activities to create tools to empower users to protect themselves from bullying, to report bullying. I'm not saying we need a police state or anything, but we do need to create those tools, and we need to continue to invest in them so that our users can have unfettered access to the fun, but not in some, there shouldn't be some police overlord state or anything, but we're going to have to make those choices. And I hope that everyone on the call and in the audience, that they take it seriously. I certainly do.
Yeah, you've mentioned generational responsibility. It makes me think of, had Web 2 thought about that more often, than everything that happened on Facebook with Cambridge Analytica and things like that, with lots of security issues, may have been approached a little differently. But I don't think we didn't know what we didn't know, clearly.
I mean, that's the thing is I don't remember anyone. I'm old, I'm 50. I was around then and also creating sites back then. And I don't remember it being part of the conversation.
Right.
I don't remember people saying, hey, we shouldn't, this is kind of off limits. This is good. This is bad. And I think that free speech and free expression is sacred. And I don't believe that we need to do anything to disrupt that, but putting pieces in place so that you can get yourself out of a situation, in VR in particular, if someone's creepy, they're in your face creepy. And you don't want no one wants their children to be experiencing that.
Yeah. It brings to mind like Asimov's rules for robotics, like nothing that's necessarily codified or formalized in any sort of legal way, but something that developers adhere to. It feels like what you're proposing is something similar to that, sort of an opt-in, voluntary collaboration of approach.
I mean, it'd be great if there was a sort of, hey, here's a bare minimum set of tools that we're all going to have. Maybe a company's going to solve this problem and we'll all kind of white label that solution. I don't know. I certainly don't want to. I don't think it's about having some weird IP tracking, deep cookie stuff. Like that scares me more than anything. I think just teaching people how to use tools that basically make someone invisible or mute them. If they get reported, then the person gets notified, hey, here's a reminder of the rules. We're going to kind of put you in the timeout zone or something like that for a while. I also, look, as we build this thing out, again, a diverse set of creators are going to create lots of experiences, but I'm hoping that we take the time to make our experiences accessible. I don't just mean that. Look, I'm a big believer in free to play, and I think that free to play has a place in the metaverse. And if you look at what's happened with Minecraft and with Roblox and Fortnite, there's a lot of fun to be had for no money before the gates come down and you've got to go in your wallet. And I think if we want these experiences to become mass market experiences for adults and grandchildren are playing with their grandparents kind of thing, that we also have to design experiences that are accessible physically. So like in VR, those handsets there's a lot of buttons on there and it's dark in there. And I'm making games that you can play with one finger on the controller, like pick any button on the controller and you can play the game. And, when we think about how to design games for people that are maybe not physically abled, for instance, we think about that. And it's one of these things where, does it cost a little more money? Could I be having my people working on something that might deliver more revenue faster? Yes, I could, but I'm going to do both. But I'm going to build safety and trust and safety in at the beginning and accessibility.
That's great. Appreciate it. Jamil, I have not forgotten about you, buddy. Hexagon Games views the metaverse as a place where narrative entertainment is engaging and via VR and AR, perhaps even enveloping. So users integrating themselves into and impacting those narratives. So what is the dream experience that you're chasing? What is the one that will attain that binge-worthy status?
Well, first of all, I would love to respond to everything that's just been said, but I'll start with your question. So getting to that binge-worthy point is definitely something that's been on all of our minds. Bill, you and I have talked about this for, I think it's been a through line in our careers, is figuring out a way to provide an experience that lights up an audience's imagination and helps them feel like they've actually stepped into another world. And what we're trying to connect the dots on is that the entertainment world has done so much heavy lifting to create worlds that are worth living in, specific IPs, but also genres, like the whole genre of the cyberpunk existence. Being able to step into that world is something that we're getting closer and closer to. Now, video games have conventionally had a relatively understood structure for a progression in them, which may or may not necessarily be that accessible for a mainstream audience. So a lot of what we're seeing as kind of the forerunners of the metaverse or the metaverses are amazing multiplayer experiences like Fortnite and like Roblox, like Marcus and Josh were talking about. And then talking about VR is like this was one of the first areas where we started talking about the metaverse has come now. Like you put the headset on and you're immersed and you're in this world. And one of the things that we want to be careful about is making sure that the metaverse, as it's presented to the worldwide public, that it not come off as something that is too hardcore for as to be consumed by the mainstream audience. Because you look at television, you look at Netflix, you look at all the streaming video platforms, they've evolved into this relationship of a subscriber relationship with consumers of linear entertainment. And that is an audience that is extremely interested in staying in the worlds that they love. So after the credits roll, they're still super excited about that world. They want to do something in it. And IDG put out some research recently that showed that 85% of that audience was interested in some kind of interactive way to stay in that world. And then 58% of those said they would pay for it. So the way that Hexagram kind of looks at this is that there's definitely interest in a multiplayer way to get into the metaverse. There's interest in a VR and AR way to get into the metaverse. The kind of unaddressed space is all of those SVOD subscribers that want to stay in the worlds that they care about. So the way in, from our point of view, is to create believable characters in these virtual worlds. AI characters that seem much more plausible than your typical NPCs that you may have encountered in your average video game. Also creating stories that matter, stories that are both written and managed by Hollywood and games writers, but also using story sifting programs so that we can actually scale using machine learning and generative systems to scale that storytelling to a much larger audience. So those are the types of technologies we're looking at in terms of scaling up the types of experiences that we provide. And that, we feel, gives you that metaverse worth living in.
Sounds amazing to me. You had mentioned at the top that there were a lot of things you wanted to respond to. Was there something specifically? It seems like maybe you're coming out of Marcus's. You guys seem to be simpatico on your approach here. Was there something you wanted to address there?
Oh, I wanted to kind of underline and plus up Marcus's comments about there is kind of these best practices from the game industry where we've had to kind of figure out psychological safety and whatever there is this kind of rich history that we can look at, whether it's putting players together so that there's safety for types of players being able to view the ambient data and understand where people are safest and where they're going to get the most enjoyment out of their play. There's also governing bodies that can form up among and around the metaverse contenders that can provide a kind of so Marcus is 100% right. We don't want to have a police state, but we can have a governing body that can, or set of guidelines that help us understand what are, help people, mainstream consumers understand what is the badge of quality that makes this something that's safe and okay for my family to step into.
Yeah, that's great. I know we're running out of time a little bit here, but I've got a few questions for the panel generally. Jump in at will. Has the incredible hype over the last couple of years about the metaverse been a good or bad thing for either the development or the expectations of the metaverse? And why do you feel that way?
So can I, I'll just jump in quickly. A part of what is the hype is actually good. A part of it is bad. So it's not either. I would say, okay, first of all, Farmville is not a metaverse. that is one of the issues that we have with the hype, is that we think video games are the metaverse. Well, video games exist, they're fantastic, but they're not the metaverse, right? Or why the metaverse was a sort of problem to solve or bring as a new product into the world. The second one is VR, right? Since I'm one of the sort of early day VR people that did musical concerts in VR. I spent like most of my days performing for people in VR in 2015, 16. And VR is not it. I don't know what other people think on this panel, but it's just a headache. So we're essentially, what the hype is today is that we're trying to build a headrest for the seats of a car first, right? So we're creating the headsets and we're imagining where we can go with this car, but there's no engine, there are no wheels, right? And that is exactly why we look at Roblox and we say, metaverse, let's bring so what the role of all these games are today, right? The hype of the metaverse is that Roblox is a plastic car. We're taking all the brands and all people in it and just like pushing it around this like yard and saying, this is the metaverse. Like, why? Because that plastic car has been used by millions of children. So, right? So that's,
yeah. I gotta disagree with you, because there is a definition of what a metaverse is. It's a 30-year-old definition. You can look it up. I posted
by whom? I mean, by whom? By Matt Ball, right? Matthew Ball's definition, or Snow Crash?
Well, use Snow Crashes then. The reality is that you're building vital technology for the evolution of the metaverse. And there are going to be the study of the metaverse, the history of it. They're going to look back on the history of the metaverse 100 years from now, and they're going to cite early chat rooms as examples of the metaverse, because it's software-enabled connection. It's an environment where people get together in a software-created environment, and they go. And I'm really excited about what you're building at Orbit, but it doesn't change the fact that this is a part of an evolution that's occurring, and the technology is going to evolve. The technology that you're building right now, someone's going to sit here on a panel, you're going to look like me, you're going to have a lot more gray in your hair, and someone's going to say that your solution is plastic. And so I just caution you.
But if you define the metaverse as a social games are just video games that you can socialize. It's just like online multiplayer games. Look, these have existed and they have terms. Like, we don't need to call an MMO a metaverse, right? There are certain qualities that the metaverse in sci-fi stories hinted at that no one has achieved, right? And there's no iteration like chat rooms and metaverse. No, this is a social app. It's just a social app, right? So what about narrative? What about what Jamil was just saying, right? What about fiction? What about activities that are not just like Second Life, just walking around the 3D space and hanging out with each other, right? Which begs the question many people have asked for years, like, why would I become an avatar? Do levels of UX control in order to talk to someone? It just doesn't make any sense, right? So the hype, the part that I think, I mean, as a team that is working on the technology problem, we think that part of hype that is interesting is at least we want to move away from what the internet has previously been, what unfair models have existed. And sitting here and talking about video games with a new name, I don't think is going to solve it. So yeah, there are two parts to the hype. It's like bringing in businesses to understand that there has to be a new sort of generation of technology, a new generation of UX, economy, financial tools, but it's not it. So that part of the hype is bad, where we want to push people into video games. It's like, this is the metaverse, just tick the box, your VP at your brand is going to just have that, oh, we just did the metaverse, and they move on. The danger of that is that a lot of brands in the next 2 years, if we don't focus on what it really has, what potential it really has, is that they will move away. The funds will move away. It's going to be another VR.
So I would say is I'll just throw out there. I think that the hype is great, because for there to be tremendous leaps forward in technology, in storytelling, and everything, the capital is required. And so basically, not everything is going to hit, and a lot of what we're doing as makers is iterating on what other people have created. And I think it's fantastic to have this much interest in this space. whether, you know, Ash and I have different ideas about the metaverse. I think an online university where people meet up and are in a class together and then they hang out and have a coffee is a metaverse. It's a metaverse university. But we can agree to disagree. But ultimately, I think that money makes the world go round here. And if you were trying to raise money for VR in the last 3 years, you would have had a really hard time. And now it's not so hard because people can kind of see it. And I think that we're seeing investments in Web3 games. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, the hype cycle is real, and we've seen it many times before. If you look at the late 90s internet, Web 2.0 was first coined in 1999, and you didn't really start to see anything of it in earnest until about 2004. Mm-hmm. I kind of feel like we're somewhere in between that range right now. Do you think that we should have the same expectations of Web3, that it's going to be about 5 years, or is that too aggressive? Like, where's your heads at in terms of timing?
I mean, you know, in terms of Web3 adoption, I think that there's sort of different measures. And so there are games that are being developed for 50,000 person Discord communities. And, you know, that's sort of one way to go. I think that there's going to be someone who creates something that drives mass market adoption of wallets. And it could be via playable objects that you then have the opportunity to register on the chain. I think that there's a way, you know, to figure out the story in the game that actually gets people to adopt it. But it's going to start with them getting something for kind of free. You know, a game like Axie charging $200 to get to the fun is probably not going to work as well as something that's free. And then some percentage of people, you have this big funnel, and then a bunch of people kind of open wallets.
Yeah, just want to jump in on, yeah, I agree. The model, for example, for Axie, right? That's not the ideal economical model. $600 million of people's money is gone, right? And so what is the metaverse? That's what I'm saying, is like a question of what is the internet? Can you all in one panel say, like even in 1 hour, describe what the internet is? Right? The question of what the metaverse is exactly the same thing. It's a suite of technologies, protocols, if you look at the internet, from the evolution of HTTP into storage spaces, into APIs, when mobile applications came in, right? So the metaverse is very similar. So it's going to be a list of books of technologies that are connected, right? So calling it online
or not connected as well.
Or not connected, yes, exactly.
You know, I mean, I've been listening to you guys chat on this, and you both have great takes on it. I think that what's happening currently, Ash, you were like, well, who wants to like go into a world and just be some other thing and hang out with people virtually? I think it's a huge amount of people that want to do that, and a shocking amount.
I didn't say it's not going to happen.
Now.
Yeah, but that is not the definition of a. So, for example, like chat rooms in Yahoo were not the definition of the social internet, right? They were not the internet. Saying that is the definition of the internet, and it's similar to saying that's the definition of the metaverse. That will be one of the corners and use cases of the metaverse.
I mean, the metaverse has been co-opted at this point by so many things and people that, even if it was written to be one thing back at a certain point in time, it's like people are owning this term and making it work for them in many different ways. It's kind of like, in some ways, that word has kind of lost all meaning and value, in my opinion. Like right now, we're just building communities. Some of them are on technology and they're virtual spaces. And some are going to be interoperable and connected. And some were never even made that way. They were just made to like stick in that walled garden. And it was a total afterthought that it would go anywhere else. But there's huge congregation of people that are experiencing virtual interaction and having a different self-expression of themselves in a digital world, and buying virtual goods that have no intrinsic physical value. Like, it's a progression. I think what you're building and what you've set out to build is going to be amazing. And where we're at, I don't know if it's a plastic car that we're in, or it's like it's the manual car that we're driving around, and you're going to make a automatic Ferrari. I can't wait to get in it. But they don't have, those are hard to find right now. I can't wait to drive yours.
I agree. And I think 5 years from now, the metaverse will not look like what we expect it to look like. I think when the internet first launched, no one could envision we would be here, right? I mean, maybe in sci-fi, right? But no one really thought we would get here so quickly, so rapidly, or that it would actually evolve in this way. Or certainly the problems. I mean, Marcus highlighted a lot of problems that hopefully the industry has learned from, and we can evolve and do better this time. But my thinking is that we don't know what this will become. And going back to Bill's original question, I love the hype. I love the opportunities it creates for creators, for content makers, for the ability to actually knit together globally for the development of technology. I mean, I think the opportunities here are really, things we cannot anticipate, and I think we should all be excited about it. But I think we can map out a better way of doing things going forward.
And I think that's probably where we're going to have to wrap it up, because we are well over time. But luckily, we have addressed every single challenge facing the metaverse. So this is probably the last panel on the topic you're ever going to need.
You did so well, Bill. Fantastic.
So thank you, Ash, Michelle, Josh, Jamil, and Marcus, and of course, everyone out there in the Zoomiverse. Ned, back to you, my friend.
Well, thank you for navigating a big topic clearly, and providing a lot of things to think about to all of you guys. It was a really fantastic panel, and thanks to the audience for your comments and engagement. We'll be back tomorrow. This is our last panel for the day, but we have one more day of LA Game Conference. Tomorrow, the day is focused not on the metaverse or Web3. It's actually focused on, there are other things going on in the game industry. So we're focused on mobile gaming and esports. And we kick off the morning with a presentation from Scooty on brand fueled rewards and user acquisition and so forth. So we'll see you guys then. Have a great day.